Number 8, Joel Embiid. This is going to get me in trouble with some people, but it is what it is. That's how this works. In this regular season, 31, 12, and 4 on 62% true shooting. In the playoffs, 24, 11, and 2 on 59% true shooting, albeit he did have an orbital bone fracture. Before I get any further into this, because Jokic is coming up soon as well, I've talked about this before on this show, but I wanted to lay it out here for the sake of this list. I value perimeter players more than bigs. Like, we're going to get to it here in a second, but like, I have Jason Tatum ahead of Embiid and Jokic. The reason for that is I value the role of what Jason Tatum does for a basketball team more than the role that Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic fulfills, even though they are the best centers that we've seen in recent NBA history. First of all, foot speed as the game has evolved and has become more 5-out, meaning more perimeter players and less interior players, and faster pace, meaning more pushing the ball in transition, foot speed has become immensely important. In those situations, slow, plodding bigs like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic can be exposed. Also, with the way that floor spacing works, it's a lot easier to deny bigs the basketball than it is to deny a perimeter player the basketball. The ability to dribble the basketball up the court against ball pressure allows you to as a perimeter player, to control your own outcome as you initiate the offense. As a big man, you have to fight for position someplace on the floor and get a post entry. Obviously, Nikola Jokic can bring the ball up the floor if he has to, but if you put some pressure on him, he can struggle with that as well. Bigs just in general, it's a different dynamic on the basketball court. This is why when I do all-time rankings, I keep bigs in a separate list from perimeter players. They play an entirely different position, and for me, I value what a perimeter player does more. Perimeter shooting, like both Jokic and Embiid are really inconsistent putting the ball in the basket from the perimeter. We'll talk about this a little bit more with Jokic in a little bit, but that becomes an issue when it comes to floor spacing and the way teams that can guard you. Also, contact that is allowed in the low post. With the way that the game has evolved, perimeter players are officiated in a very ticky-tack way. You can't touch them. You can't get up underneath them. You can't do that kind of stuff. Post players, it's anything goes. And so just with the way that the rules are, it's disadvantageous to be a big man who's operating around the basket. So those are, and just in general, when it comes to a confined half-court environment, a big perimeter player that can dissect the defense from all three levels, I think that's a level of value in the game of basketball that a big man cannot replicate. For the record, that's just my philosophy. This is just the way I see the game. So if you guys are at home and you're like, Jason, that's stupid, Jokic is the best player in the world, or Embiid's the best player in the world, big men are going to run the league, you're crazy, that's fine. As a matter of fact, write it out in the comments. I want to see you guys tell me why you feel that way. I'm not Mr. I have everything in the game of basketball figured out. I have my belief systems. You guys have yours. I try to listen to as many smart basketball minds as I can to try to learn. You guys know I'm not married to any sort of idea, so I want to hear why you guys think I'm wrong if that's the case. But just so you know, as an explanation moving forward, I value perimeter players more. So Embiid was 79% on 4.2 restricted area makes in the playoffs. That's excellent. He continues to be completely unguardable in single coverage. There are maybe three guys that I'd like their chances in that situation: Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Rudy Gobert. But even with them, Joel Embiid's going to have some wins in those situations. The revelation since the James Harden trade has been how good Joel Embiid is in short roll situations. James Harden, because of his ability to shoot off the dribble, forces guards to chase him over the top. And even though he's struggled to get downhill penetration the way he used to, teams are forced to bracket him because as he's coming off of that ball screen, the defender's caught in behind him. And so the the screen defender, the big, has to come up to contain James Harden. And so Joel Embiid's getting all of these opportunities in the short roll, catching the ball on short lobs or bounce passes right at around the semicircle. And he has been absolutely unstoppable in that position, getting fouls and finishes at the rim, even making some reads out of that situation, albeit that's a specific weakness of his. But that was the revelation of this playoff run and of this season. The James Harden pairing has unlocked Joel Embiid as a short roller. He's another guy that has supreme confidence, genuinely believes he's the best player in the world. That shows up in clutch shooting, despite him being pretty bad at putting the ball in the basket, away from the basket. as he gets further away from the rim. He's 100% a believer in his ability to make those shots, and you see that in big situations, just like it was at the end of that Toronto Raptors game that he stole up there in Toronto. And then he's a very good defensive anchor as long as he's allowed to stay at the rim. But that, again, brings up the shortcoming that I was talking about with bigs. Any scheme can force any smart team that has the personnel can go out there and force Joel Embiid to cover on the perimeter, pull him away from the rim, and that limits his impact. Now, obviously, I have Joel Embiid way down at 8, so there are some weaknesses that I'm going to point out here. In this playoff run, Joel Embiid shot just 33% on all attempts outside of the restricted area. So again, that's not paint, that's not short range, that's restricted area. So if he's not right under the basket, he's missing 2 out of every 3 shots. That was just in this playoff run, but it's been an issue for him throughout his career. And this is what I keep saying this on the show, and every time I get people that get upset. Joel Embiid is actually not that good at putting the ball in the basket as he gets further away. He relies on finishing at the rim and drawing fouls. That's where the vast majority of his offense comes. He has these highlight plays, a dream shake for a fadeaway jump shot, a nasty pull-up 3 over the top of Nikola Jokic off of a dribble combo. That all looks great, but in the percentages, it's not actually manifesting in results. That is a specific weakness of his. He relies heavily on the whistle. He's a very poor playmaker, averaged just 2 assists per game in this playoff run. This is something that I've talked about going into the season, coming out of the season. It's just a reality. If you double team Joel Embiid, he's not good at making reads out of that. Not a hyper criticism of him in general, because almost every big is like that. Even Jokic in this postseason run averaged 6 assists with 5 turnovers. So he's considered the best playmaking big in the world, and he had a pretty rough postseason as a playmaker. Anthony Davis can't read double teams. Karl Anthony Towns can't read double teams. So Embiid's is not like uniquely weak at that. It's just the reality of the way bigs are. And it also has a lot to do with the way floor spacing works in post-up situations. It's just tough to succeed there. He's always going to put up monster numbers, but his impact can be limited in a playoff series due to scoutable weaknesses. If you run the floor on him, he's going to struggle. If you double him in the post, he's going to struggle. If you make him guard in space, he's going to struggle. If you defend without fouling away from the basket, he's going to miss shots. So in a playoff setting, when a coach has a chance to scout and try out different things with personnel to see what works best, you can vastly limit Joel Embiid's impact. That's why he's at number 8, despite being potentially the best regular season player in the entire game. And last but not least, and this is just a reality, I have to reveal my biases. I'm not a huge fan of Joel Embiid in general. And the main reason has to do with his foul baiting approach. I'm not going to lie to you guys about that and act like I'm being 100%, unbiased. I'm not a huge fan of Joel Embiid. The way he approaches the game, I've tweeted out dozens of clips over the years of him like being wide open, 4 feet from the basket and like jumping into a guy's chest and kicking his legs and falling over, and me being like, dude, what are you doing, man? And then you watch him in interviews and he genuinely thinks he's getting fouled all the time, which guess what? He does get fouled a lot, just like every NBA superstar. The difference is he makes a clown show out of himself trying to draw free throws in those situations. Now, I would never accuse him of doing this on purpose. He absolutely did not do this on purpose. But on the play where Joel Embiid fell over and ran into Danny Green, he was flopping. And he flopped and fell with his giant frame on the floor and slid into his own teammate and ripped up his knee. Now, in general, when we all go up to LA Fitness and we play, or you're playing in your men's league, or hell, if you're playing a different sport, it's generally considered reckless to throw your body on the floor around knees and ankles. But to Joel Embiid, it's all about getting those 2 free throws. And I genuinely have a problem with that as a basketball fan. So that I just feel I feel like it's important for me to point that out, because that absolutely is going to color my analysis of him. I'm human just like all of you guys. I'm not immune to biases. I have a problem with his foul baiting approach. I thought he played a role in Danny Green's injury, even though it wasn't on purpose. And he's just not my favorite NBA player.